We're discussing what is love. We throw the word around an awful lot. And at least in the United States, we can love a piece of cake, we can love our dog, we can love our parents, but each one is a different kind of love. So we thought it might be interesting to investigate what we were defining and what it meant to us. So we started with the idea of the definition of love from the dictionary, and that's a strong feeling of affection or concern toward another person, a sense of empathy, if you will, arising from a kinship or a close friendship. In other words, this person means something to us. They are of value. We would be upset if something happened to them. Another form of love is a strong feeling of affection to someone accompanied by sexual attraction. One might define that more like lust, where there is a very physical component to it that we feel very drawn, almost compulsory to be in connection with this person. And our final definition from the dictionary is a feeling of devotion or adoration toward God or a God. The concept that there is a higher being that is responsible or in a position over us, and we respect them as we share our love with them as a form of respect. In that direction, those are the basic definitions, but you'll notice that there's affection and concern or affection and devotion. There's this attachment that we have to whatever it is we're saying we love. I say the definition of love is a feeling, an attachment to someone. We tend to use the word empathy, where we resonate with what this person's happiness or their sadness might be. We put ourselves into that person's place. We look at what they're going through and go, oh, I know what that feels like. I feel for them is another expression. It's wanting the best for another. We were caring about their welfare. It's important to us to know that this person, thing, item is happy, is safe, is content. So we're going to start with our initial question. What do you personally feel when you think about loving a family member versus a friend versus a respected professional? You might feel that you love Maha as a respected professional, as a devoted person. You feel your love towards your family, your children, and you have a love to the people that you work with or that you share your social time with. Do you feel a difference in that type of love? Do you see a difference in your definition of love, a different level of love to that? So we're giving ourselves a chance to contemplate and give ourselves a more conscious understanding of what do we mean ourselves when we say, I love a person, a thing. This is a general question open for answers.
I personally have this, when it comes to my daughter, I recognize this, it's written quite cynical, that of course you want your child to survive, right? It's a basic instinct. But I remember when I became a mother, before I became a mother, I was an artist. I'm still an artist, but I would have sworn I would never become a mother. The moment I became a mother, it was like I became mother to every children on earth. So my empathy actually extracted. It's so strange. So it's not just my own child, but I became a mother to every other children. Like we discussed, I think it's the same if you take a stray dog and you care for it, your empathy just grows towards, so it's not just making sure your child or infant is surviving. Some sort of empathy in you extracts somehow.
Expands,
and not just, exactly. So this is something I find interesting. Then I noticed that with people like Maha or people which I'm not intertwined with personally, I can have a normal universal love. I can forgive and I can understand. And then I have close family members or friends situations which I'm close to or which is complicated. And then it gets quite a different sort of, a dance. Then I feel more this, abandonment, pride, shame, fear, whatever. I don't feel this in a connection to Maha or people on the street, or I feel a certain compassion. I can you know, we all have these days where we feel like almost Buddha. We are just expanding compassion, right?
Yeah.
And then you get to close relationships, and the roles sort of it's this. They just get twisted somehow, and you get to confront all these ego masks. And this I find so interesting. That's where we grow, I think, in meeting with this.
For sure. That's interesting. Anyone else want to contribute?
Yeah, I was thinking, I hope you can hear me okay.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. What I've observed is there's a lot of, if I have a friend, I care for them, but there are even different kinds of friends. And I feel like the more I identify with someone, the more standards I have, the more expectations I have with them. And so, and it can be, it's just as little as they didn't invite me out and all of a sudden I'm hurt. You know, they have other friends, it's beautiful. But, you know, if I am, you know, I start to create, you know, these stories inside, but the love that I feel for them is half conditional in those situations. So
Would we call that FOMO love?
That's FOMO love, absolutely.
Fear of missing out.
Fear of missing out, and just feeling like, you know, my present isn't enough, and so there's some greed and such there too. But I'm finding that I'm really, really curious why love that I attach to a relationship and a romantic relationship really causes a lot of drama inside. I start to want to control the person. I begin to feel very sensitive. Extra sensitive. I'm already pretty darn sensitive in a good way. I feel in my therapy practice I need to be sensitive, but I really am curious what happens, you know, as soon as that label is instituted. And I think it's that the identity thing. So long story short, it's all love in a meta way, of course, but in an intimate way. I feel like I'd really love to practice bringing that divine love into my intimate relationships for sure.
It sounds like you have expectations attached to your romantic relationships.
Rom-coms did it to me. I blame romantic comedy movies. Really?
Oh, that's cute. That's cute. No, but it's a very, very important aspect of it. And it's part of why the masks are helpful in helping us understand our definition of love. Because the ego masks help us understand our expectations. We work our way to understanding why we are attached to certain things. So yeah, excellent perspective. That's a good observation for sure.
Thanks.
And also, I think it's interesting to watch oneself. So I'm thinking about it when I listen to Susie Ram. I think all romantic relationships echoes back to our childhood, our family sort of connections, right? We have something deep buried in the childhood, which makes us react when we're in a romantic situation. What was the relationship to the father? What was the relationship to the mother? How was their relationship? We are somehow colored by that, and it haunts us until I'm close to being sort of aware of it by now, and I'm 47 years. So, Susie Ram, you are in the middle of this. I think that colors us so much.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
I think we could tie that to role models. And that is, again, another definition of love. We are expecting ourselves to behave a certain way because of the role models we grew up with, tells us that's the definition of love. And today's effort here is for us to stop assuming we know the definition, stop expecting our definition to be accepted by everyone else, and to reframe it, to approach the idea of love from a more divine direction, one from acceptance, one from honoring what is, as opposed to what we want it to be, which is half our conflict anyway. But excellent, excellent.
Oh, I'm so glad you're recording this. I need to hear that again.
Me too, because I could never repeat it again.
That was powerful.
Well, indeed, indeed. So, anyone else care to share? Yes.
I remember when I had my baby, before I had her, and I remember thinking, oh, I wouldn't want to adopt a baby. You know, I want my own baby. And then after she was born, I realized, well, one time, okay, she cried out for me. I was in the bathtub, and it was the first time I'd had to relax and feel good, you know, since I'd had her. But I had no negative feeling at all about, you know, getting out of the bathtub immediately and going to tend to her. But at that moment, I realized a lot of the reason I loved her so much was because she needed me. And that I would love any child as much, you know, but I remember that very vividly. And then now, well, with my father, I learned that love and hate go together. So I can see now that that had a lot to do with the way I thought of my friends, you know, because I would love them and then sometimes I would hate them. And it took me a long time to figure that out. But now I can accept my friends for what they are. I just don't have the judgment that I did have for my friends. And I feel like that I love people more equally. I'm not talking about my family right now. I'm talking about my circle of friends that I don't. I love them all, but I don't really judge what they do. Maybe I do some, but I hardly ever feel it, you know. I mean, I don't feel judgmental of things that used to would have really bothered me.
Yeah.
I think, well, I used to be like that. I mean, I still am sometimes, but yeah.
Yeah, there's something about getting older. You keep recognizing yourself in other people going, oh, yeah.
Oh, well, right. I still am that way, but a lot, you know, but I just see so much change in myself as far as judging my friends and accepting them for who they are.
Right, right. So it sounds like it's a smoother, less contentious for you. Things are calmer.
Have that anymore.
Yeah. Nice, nice.
Mm-hmm. That is nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Not to have quite so much drama in our lives.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right. In the regards to our conversation, then, we can think about love from our own planes of existence, the divine love, our soul nature love, all four of our lower planes love, forms of love, whether that's our physical, intellectual. But we can also look at love as a form of survival, a form of communication for our species, for the world to exist. Love can be natural. It can be something that we generate as a form of survival. This is something that a mother's love, like the grizzly mom who will take down a big grizzly dad. She's not in it because she loves her offspring. She's doing it because that's what a mom does. There's also the idea of love being intellectual, that we're in love with a sunset or with music. We feel an attachment to something abstract. And we feel that same sense of connection, same sense of devotion as we were describing love as being. It can also be a form of emotional appreciation. When we are in gratitude to someone, we can feel the same sense of love and appreciation for the person who's done something for us, a person who saved us, perhaps, someone who saved us from our fears, who replaced something for us. Those are all ways of loving someone for different reasons. So if we have different definitions and different degrees of love, how do they interact with each other? How does our emotional idea of love interact with our mother's love, the love that comes from taking care of your offspring, which is very visceral, very vital plane-ish? How do we relate that to our love of God, to the love of divine? These are different ways and different things that we're loving in a different ways. How do we relate to that? How do we take these relationships and look at them deeper from a context of love as a general sense versus a reaction to something going on in our lives? So is love actually a judgment? Do we have to decide that something deserves our love, or it's worthy of our love, or it meets our definition of love? How do we approach loving something? Have we ever given that any thought? I guess that resolves down to, does that make love conditional? And that might relate back to Susie Rahm's comment, where we are expecting something from the exchange. And when we don't get it, we want to we want to pull back our love. We want to redefine our relationship with that person. Is that love?
From my point of view, it's like Janelle says something. I mean, I'm not the age of Janelle yet, but I already feel this. There's something which happens when you get older. You spend quite a lot of time when you're a teenager young and adult young, worrying about what other people think, what other people talk about, and so on. And then you get a little bit older, and then suddenly you are quite liberated. You only worry about what people close to you talk about. And in that moment, there is actually some sort of, it's like Maha says, to mourn things. If you cannot do anything about what people talk or think or whatever, mourn it and then just be in the moment and enjoy the love you. I'm at the moment I'm actually using my great grandfather as his. He's 94 years old, and he's just happy. He's just thankful. Every day is a present to him, and he is. I cannot. I never seen more joy. He's just grateful. It's this Krutanya in its most present moment. And I'm thinking about this, trying to live life this way. But I think there is some drama connected to being young, which you cannot avoid. It's also some sort of, it's not just the process and bringing up of the human ego. It's also the soul, which needs this sort of like in the old days, young women had to go on a journey in Europe to sort of experience things, to get cultivated and grow up. And I think the journey for the soul is drama, because without drama, you cannot understand your own borders or other people's borders. So we need to forgive this also process in the road. Maybe also to family members and close friends. This is something I always practiced, to both forgive myself and other people. We're trying the best we can. There's so few people which actually wants to harm other people. We are, it's like Maha says, we're monkeys in the jungle, right? We're just sort of
figuring it out. Yeah.
yeah. In there's lots of love for me in the process of this understanding what is what.
So there's an element of forgiveness to the love.
And hatred and shame and pride and fear, etc., which
Yeah,
we
back
all
to the
have.
masks.
Yeah, exactly.
Indeed. Interesting point of view.
What triggers what is also an interesting question, right?
Yeah.
I found myself, and I also found others. Now I'm 47, so I can speak with some certain experience, not like my grandfather, but nevertheless. I found myself triggering all kinds of masks like this. What am I triggering in other people to make them prove they love me, let's say, right?
Interesting.
And opposite also.
Yeah, indeed. And that's certainly another way of looking at it. I've been approaching this conversation from being the person loving. There's the other side of this, and that is the person receiving the love. And I haven't even gotten into that side of the conversation, but the idea of how we want to express our love to that person. You bring up a very good point, though, in terms of registering the response and the reaction. That feeds us, again, how we would want to define it, how we want to interact with people. Yeah, good points. Good points. Anyone else care to contribute?
Well,
So following up on Kala's comment, the next question I had was, is love an expression of value or prestige? There we are on the receiving end of love. Do we love something or someone because of the attention we'll get from that love? Kind of like an influencer. Is there a point, is that actually love? Or is that more a case of feeding our pride or someone else's pride? Is that more a case of an attachment as opposed to a form of love where we're looking for a payout? We're wanting something in return. So instead of love being something that we're expressing as a unattached emotion, a non-judgmental point of view, we're instead looking at love as an exchange. And I'm certain we've all seen that kind of exchange happen, not ourselves, on other people's parts, where you're just watching the whole thing go down like, that can't be right. It's just not the way this is supposed to work. And yet it is an actual exchange. The person provides something, so they'll get something back. And I would offer that in the form of love, the definition that we're working with here, we're aiming for the divine, which is to love because that's what's the thing to do, not because if it's going to have an effect on someone, not because we're going to get something back from it, but because that's the frequency that is needed in this situation, whatever it might be. So now we take it from, is love a judgment? Is love a form of acceptance? Do we have to accept somebody in order to love them? Or if we love them, does that mean we've accepted them? I know my mom would definitely say not to that one with my older brothers. She still loved them, but she definitely did not accept the way they behaved. And that leads us to, is love a form of control? Do we use love as a way for us to make people do things? If you won't do that, I won't love you, kind of a response to something. So this is a free-for-all here. It's an open-ended, if you have feedback or thoughts about this, but the idea here is when you approach something as an exchange with others, whether that is a professional that you admire, it is your divine practices, and you're speaking of the masters, or you're discussing your personal relationships with your family. Do you feel, looking at it and being conscious of your interaction, that you are using love to manipulate your situation, or your relationships? I know I do.
Yes.
Good for you.
Um,
I'm proud of you for acknowledging that.
oh my God, yes. Um, I just need to feel that. I don't really have anything to contribute.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like I said, though, I'm proud of you for acknowledging that. It's a hard one to be able to look at yourself clearly without delusion or drama and acknowledge, how do I use love in my relationships? Anybody else?
I was fascinated by this, just your comment before. I think it's so easy for us to look at others and observe what they're doing compared to what we are doing ourselves. Then I'm
Yeah.
thinking about the relationship to my mother and my grandmother, and I come from, I think, compared to most families, quite a loving, caring, spiritual family. And I remember understanding that my grandmother used manipulation and all kinds of, I don't know what, once in a while I needed to sort of say to my grandmother, back up, sorry for not calling you for 1 week. And my grandfather had to help me, saying to my grandmother, just relax and so on. So I'm happy that I had my grandfather. But I have relationships in my family where it's almost too much, but I know it's out of love. It's because they are sort of, and it's true, it's part of the ego masks, some sort of needing whatever, but it doesn't make the love less, if it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I also have relationships, friendships this way, and some friendships go negative when we don't have the right communication. That's one thing which is interesting about. I have Amalie, you know her, Amalie. She was in Sanghas many times. She is like a sister to me. And then some of my family, we can almost not cross the borders of each other because we know the love is there. You understand? And then I had relationships where I thought, okay, this is a friend forever. But we're not in this family section of that you mentioned, this love and hate. For me, it's intertwined, because the more you love, the more fragile you are, and you are open to all this childhood abandonment, rejection, guilt, whatever, right? So for me, it's I use this to look at myself and just investigate and discover more. The moment I think I'm enlightened and in Zen, I realize, oh, I'm not like Susie Ram said, this drama mode.
Yeah. Interesting perspective on that. You bring up the idea that within your family, you have somebody say something that kind of stings a little bit. You're like, and yet you almost immediately let it go because you know this person wouldn't say it out of meanness. They're saying it out of love. So even though it's a mean thing to say, you know it was said with love, so you forgive them immediately for it. Whereas if it was a stranger or somebody from work who made a comment like that, you would have a very different reaction to it. Interesting. Anybody else have an episode to share?
I do see in myself that I do things I don't want to do sometimes, like social gatherings, because I feel like I need to have friends, and my inclination is to say no too often. I don't want to do this, or I don't want to do that for whatever reason. I'd rather be at home, but I do things that I'd rather not, and that is so that I will remain loved.
Oh, you're saying that you feel you need to do certain things you'd rather not because that's what keeps you loved by these people.
Yes.
Okay, interesting.
If I say no all the time, I won't have any friends. They'll quit asking. I mean, I don't know what that says about me, but there's just a neediness.
Well, it's a valid concern that if people keep asking you for something and it doesn't happen, that they're going to stop asking. That's a very valid concern. But it's also very insightful of you to recognize that you are kind of creating an exchange, that you recognize I have to give them something if I want them to give me something back.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a very interesting point of view.
And I totally have the same, Janelle, because I'm an artist also, and I have moments of totally intro periods. So I totally recognize what Janelle is saying about I have to get out there. I need to, all these people I love, it's not just entertaining people. It's also to give people I love some sort of, I still love you. How can you say that when you're introverted without meeting with them, even if you're not up to it? That's what you do. So it's not just making a party, it's just showing people love, even if you could just live in a cave for some time, right?
Well, certainly there are those moments when a cave seems awfully appealing to me as opposed to going out and going dancing or socializing with people. There's certainly that to be seen. But I just find it insightful that we're aware enough in our relationships with people that in Janelle's situation, she sees an exchange. And that is, our relationships are exchanges, that communicating with people is an exchange of words. It's just an interesting way of looking at love as a medium of exchange, like money, versus as an emotion or an intellectual. So I appreciate that. It was not something that I had observed before. That's a very good point to be able to acknowledge that. Definitely. Would we be able to say that that type of exchange is sort of using love as a form of control? We're controlling our friends by giving them what they want so they'll give us what we want? Is there an attachment here that says, I need you as a friend, and without going into reasons for why, my need says that I will give you love so that you will give me what I need? It helps give us a bigger three-dimensionality about what love is, instead of it just being a four-letter word on a piece of paper. We're getting a better understanding that love can represent a lot of different things to people. Before I go further, I thought I saw a chat go by and I don't see it now. So if it was deleted on purpose or something, please let me know. If I missed it, please put it up again because I can't read it. It's missing from my chat.
No, there's Maribel saying, yes, sometimes the love that I give is egoistic, above all with the boyfriend. Like the person love me and I suppose it's never finished, assuming the relationship. I can see this, although I don't partner, although I don't agree, maybe.
There it is. Okay.
Can you see it now?
I can finally see it. Yeah, I don't know why I was having difficulty finding the silly thing. Okay.
I wanted to say something.
Yeah.
That exchange that I'm talking about, it doesn't feel quite right. There's something, in me that thinks that there's a manipulation. But
is there?
Well, I'm trying to look because I think there is something that's not quite right. It's a fear that I won't have any friends.
Okay.
And I feel that I need friends. I don't want to be home alone all the time. The
Mm.
introvert, and I don't enjoy parties. I'm going to one this evening.
Oh,
Aha!
Janelle.
Now we understand.
I mean, I don't know. Sorry. I didn't do that on purpose.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
I can't see you. Oh. Anyway, I need to look at it. I mean, if you have anyone has any feedback for me, I'd be glad to have it.
I mean, my feedback is I know exactly what you're going through, Janelle, and I think I did since I was young. And I have quite a large, scale of friends, both close and broader friends. But I had this dilemma since I was young, which you're talking about.
Okay.
I know exactly what you're speaking about. So you just, like we were just laughing now, right?
Yeah.
You need to use laughter and compassion. It's my experience in this process of this, and not losing yourself. I have it exactly like you do. I am both an extreme extrovert and very introverted.
Yeah.
So I have your dilemma every day.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know what you're going through. Totally.
Okay.
I would suggest that when you find yourself asking, am I manipulating? You probably are.
Okay.
Okay, if the question is coming to your mind, there is something there to observe. But more to the point, there's where those masks of the ego come in. When the person asks you to join them or suggests doing something together, are you responding to them as an adult to an adult, where you can say, gee, that sounds like fun, but I would rather do this instead or in addition to? Or do you respond to the person from more the point of view of, well, I want to make them happy and I don't want to make them upset and I don't want to disappoint them, so I'm going to go ahead and agree to it, but I really don't want to do it. There's different ways that we respond to the idea, especially if you happen to be an extrovert and an introvert. Some days you feel like it and sometimes you don't.
And also, Suki, it's very tricky, because if you're this half and half extrovert, introvert, then in a way you would like to go to these things you hate because it's good for you. It's healthy to get out there. Like Janelle says, instead of sitting home alone, it's also good once in a while, every fifth time you meet somebody like yourself and you have a soul meeting. And it's nice and quiet. So I also think it's good once in a while to push yourself into situations which you are, because in a way, like the ego masks, try and tune into, are you afraid? What is this preventing you from going out in the world? If we look at this one love, right?
Yeah, exactly. Expressing your love from the point of view of being true versus it's a exchange. I'm going to give you this, so you're going to give me something back.
I'd also like to add, there's an innate need to socialize when we are in our primal selves. We're we need some type of stimulation. There's studies about children with no affection and how they do not prosper very well. And so, Janelle, I'm wondering, maybe trust that voice inside that says, hey, I gotta get out. But I love that assessment. Is it manipulation versus is it just true desire to share and communicate? But yeah, and just be softer, I think, with yourself, because I'm like an expert on being hard on myself. So I think I can identify with your curiosity and how it might just stir, turn to a judgment of self. So yeah, just you're also such a blessing, when you're around others, whether you're the center of attention or just being a presence. So maybe playing around with your role in social situations might be useful too.
Thank you.
Indeed, allow ourselves the flexibility to be true to ourselves while still sharing our affection for others. We should not be having to hide ourselves in order to be affectionate, to be able to share our love with people. If we're doing that, there's something not right. When we deal with our feelings of love, this kind of falls with what we were talking about. We can trigger the sense of egotism or egocentrism, a feeling of the world is all about me, as opposed to, and narcissism is another version of that. So we're basically using it as a tool. And this is, again, we're following up with what we've just been talking about, using love as a tool, as a medium of exchange. When we have these questions come up, it's a really good place to start by looking at the masks of the ego. For the purposes of our podcast, we're kind of trying to keep it down to, or keep it to an hour or so. And we know we can't possibly get through all of the 21 masks with what's left of our time appointed. However, the masks are an excellent place for us to refer to when we are in doubt, when we have questions. And in this particular condition, it's about love. So we can look at the denials as a beginning place for us to consider this. And under the denials, which I think we can all agree, they are the fundamental, they are the most deeply rooted aspects of our ego that are the hardest for us to really get a grip on. They pop up repeatedly for years, and they will continue to pop up. They pop up for Maha still to this day. They're still there. So we thought we would use the denials as a place for us to try and do a slight guided meditation to sort of show us how we can use the masks of the ego to help us better identify what love is meaning to us on this current exchange or current experience, and how better to define it so that we are more mindful, more conscious, and more compassionate with our love. So I'm going to hand it over to Kala and offer the opportunity to take a look at the three denials, pride, shame, fear, and give you a chance to reflect on how those denials impact us when we are attempting to express or share love with another.
All right. Thank you, Suki. I want you to close your eyes and take a deep breath and pay attention to your bodies right now. And you breathe. I want you to tune into a relationship at the moment where you have something you're afraid of. It doesn't necessarily mean you're afraid of getting beaten or what they are saying, but try and tune into and smell and breathe into something which makes you somehow afraid. Afraid like in uncomfortable. There's something you worry about in this relationship. It can be a relationship to your family, or it can be a relationship to a husband or wife or lover, or even a child. Try and breathe into the emotion of fear at the moment. It can be fear of not saying the right things, not doing the right things, or not knowing what to do at the moment. And you breathe into this. You go back to your body now and breathe. Now I want you to focus and think about a relationship where there's some sort of feeling ashamed involved. You can search for a while. Maybe it's a mother and father, which is not appreciating what you're doing. That's where you feel shame. Maybe it's a spouse, or maybe it's co-workers. Try and search a little bit around and breathe and feel a moment of shame. Try and locate it. When you find this feeling of shame, you try and breathe in this feeling for a moment. It's almost like having trust to this. You just breathe it in from the bottom of your stomach, through your lungs, and it's okay. And you breathe. The last situation or feeling I want you to look into at the moment, or tune and breathe into, is pride. Do you have a situation at the moment where you're too proud to see something or to admit something? Maybe it's a dispute at work, or it can be with family. It can also be your spouse. Just take your time, don't rush. Try and smell your way through and feel your way through with your body. There's a situation where you are feeling pride, or you cannot admit, even if you know it, that you may be, or a little bit wrong. And you breathe into this. Before we end this, I want you to briefly get close to the relationship with someone which made you afraid. Where did you feel fear? The next was, where did you feel shame? Breathe. And the last was, where did you feel pride? And you just breathe. And you slowly come back to yourself.
Nice. Thank you, Carla.
Mm.
The goal behind this was to facilitate each of us giving ourselves the space and permission to evaluate our definition of love against the masks of the ego, with an opportunity to gently, compassionately, without judgment, observe yourself and your relationship to the word love, your relationship to other people with love, and encourage you to continue the practice with the other masks of the ego. It's a beautiful way to integrate and an opportunity to give yourselves a deeper understanding of what love means to you and what you want love to mean to you, to mean to others. Facilitate your communications and your ability, your skills for being able to be true to yourself while still loving others and not being in fear, pride, or shame that our love is going to be rejected, denied, abandoned, or any of the other issues that we tend to carry with us when we hold our heart out and offer it to someone. And we're concerned that it's going to either be rejected or denied. So give yourself that permission gently with yourselves first, an opportunity to share with yourself safely, lovingly, and then provide ourselves with the feeling of confidence, the feeling of self-love that we can then share with others. Do it honestly, healthily, divinely, as opposed to being attached to various different human plane weaknesses, challenges. That pretty much concludes our podcast for today. Does anyone have any feedback or thoughts they'd like to share?
Mm.
It was very nice. Thank you.
All right, we'll make the video available shortly. It'll probably be about a week. We were going to go through it and make sure it's as edited as we can do it. And we'll make sure that you have a link for it. You're very welcome. Very welcome. Thank you all for joining us today. Very appreciative. And hopefully you'll consider joining us for the Lady Sangha, where we will be continuing this topic and discussing a mother's love. And we'll have the opportunity to go into this in with greater detail. And we'll have had a couple of weeks to reflect on it and take a look at it again so we can pursue this conversation one more time. So, nothing else to be said? Offered? Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, everyone. Peace and blessings. Thank you.